Music speaks to every soul. I've never met a person, even if they don't sing, Steve Siler, even if they don't sing, I've never met someone that doesn't have a favorite song, or at least one, or something that when they hear the melody, it resonates in their soul, maybe even bringing peace to their soul.
Yes.
You know this. You've been spending decades bringing music to life. What is it about music that first captured your heart?
Well, what first captured my heart, this does not make me unique, was I was watching Ed Sullivan, and this little group called the Beatles came on, and I was like, wow, that looks like fun, right? And
I thought you were going to say to impress a girl, so that's probably a better story.
well, that comes next.
Okay.
First the Beatles.
I had something called the Beatles Junior with my best friend in 6th grade, and that's exactly what we were trying to do. I even learned how to do the autographs, so I could sign their autographs on pictures and hand them out at lunchtime. Whatever it takes.
Good.
But I don't think that's what you were asking about, really.
No, I am, because I mean, it all starts somewhere. We fall in love with music somewhere.
It does.
The Lord will enter your story, not probably. The Lord enters your story, but this is where you started.
Yeah, and playing in school, getting the opportunity to be in a school orchestra was huge. And the only reason I was in school orchestra was because I wanted to get out of the music education class. What do I have to play to get out of this horrible, boring class?
Yeah.
So I was tall. They handed me a double bass. This looks like fun. So I played double bass in the orchestra for the next 5 or 6 years. It was just wonderful. So getting exposed to classical music. I played guitar in the jazz band. I played trombone in the summer school in the summer band. It's like if it was an instrument, yes, give it to me. I'd love to try it. And so all of those things kind of sparked it, right?
Yeah.
There was really never a style of music where I said, no thanks. I mean, I love music. I think if it's excellent to me, that's the thing. You can have bad music in any genre. You can have excellence in any genre, right? So just drawn to things that were exciting, that sparked me, like that singer sounds great, that guitar player is amazing, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I started on guitar, and again, because that's what the guys in that group played, I'll play one of those. And then when I realized, I think I want to do this, like for real, that's when I realized I need to sit down at a piano, because the whole orchestra is laid out for you on the piano. And that blew it wide open for me. And now, like, when I'm writing a song, I can know it wants to be born on the piano. Or I can be playing it, no, I think this one wants to be born on guitar, Yeah. And just have that flexibility is really neat.
It's one thing to go from performing music that other people have written, whether it's the lyrics or the musical melodies. It's another thing to being the writer. When did that come on?
Right away. And again, I don't want to be boring about this, but the Beatles were writers. So if I want to be like my heroes, I got to write. So I've got some amazing songs from when I was 10. And the funny thing is, or the interesting thing is, the melodies are pretty good. Even for those songs, the lyrics are ridiculous.
Sure.
10-year-old.
10-year-old
Fisherman,
lyrics.
the shark just ate up Dan, stuff like that. And I don't know how my parents did it, but my mom would sing along with me, and my dad would record, right? And they didn't even laugh. And I listen back and I think, oh, God bless them, because I just can't imagine how hard it was not to laugh at that stuff. But their encouragement was huge, so I just kept on writing. And my friend in elementary school, we wound up writing 200 songs together by the time we graduated from high school.
That's incredible. Were your parents musically inclined?
My mom was a great singer. She was actually offered a deal by Capitol Records when I was a little boy, and she turned it down because she was already married and had a son. And she had seen what the tour. She worked at United Western Recording, which is a famous recording studio in Hollywood, and she had seen what the touring did to families. And she's like, "No, I don't want that." So, but I actually wrote a song called "It Should Have Been You," because if anybody should have had a music career, it was my mom.
Wow. But she laid it down because she knew what the cost would be. That's so cool. When you think about the influence of your parents, musically, that's one thing. But if you were to say, this is how mom and dad probably influenced me the most, was it music or was it something else?
Well, I always like to talk about this one thing my dad said. He used to say, they are only people who have done it before you. If you can dream it, you can do it. And don't worry about what other people say. Everybody's got their own opinion, but if this is your dream and you believe in it and you want to work hard and do it, go for it. And don't worry about what anybody else says about it.
You have worked hard.
Good advice.
Well, and I'll tell you what, when you pursue the songwriting career, when you pursue music for a living, you better get used to rejection. There's a ton of it, right? I always say you have to have the height of a rhinoceros and the heart of a butterfly to do songwriting, because you got to open up your heart. You got to literally open up your chest and throw your heart out on the table and let people stomp around in it to get anything that people need to hear, right? If you're going to tell the truth about stuff, hard things, you got to be honest. But by the same token, you have to be willing to hear a lot of no. And so it's a high wire act. It really, emotionally. Yeah. It's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I know you've worked hard. You have now, since 10 years old, come through a few decades of music.
Only a few,
and you, I mean, with the Beatles being your first influence, and then, but you walk with the Lord. The Lord has redeemed you, and at some point in your life, He entered into the story to where you knew that He was there. When did you meet the Lord?
Well, I was 16 when I gave my life to Christ, but that's not where the story really begins, because the story begins after I banged my head against the wall for 12 years trying to become a rock star. And God's like, no, son, no, no, son. And it's like the carrot is right here, and I just keep on going for it. And I had so many close calls, so many, where you think, oh, this is it. Yeah. And the closest call was I'd co-written a song that wound up being a single for this band. And they had a full-page color ad in Billboard announcing the next hit single from this band, right? And so I bought that Billboard magazine and go, I'm on my way. This is my rocket ship to the moon. Here we go. Heard the song on the radio. First time to ever hear my song on the radio, right? Wow. And thinking, this is going to be so great. Yeah. And hearing it and going, that's not it. It was like, for your listeners who know Peggy Lee, is that all there is? It was like, I suddenly realized that was me aping the culture, giving them what I thought they wanted, but there was nothing of me in my song. I couldn't find me. And so I went into the church. Our church was open 24 hours a day, this little church in Southern California called Little Brown Church. And went in there in the middle of the night and just sat there and said, Lord, I know you gave me this gift of music. I also know this is not what I'm supposed to be doing with it. So can you send something? And if it's not music, okay, but it can't be this. Yeah. And a couple weeks later, I had played a song in church. I'd written 3 Christian lyric songs to that point in my life. And there was a total stranger in the house that day who just happened to be getting ready to produce a stage play about childhood sexual abuse by 2 Christian authors. And he called me out of the blue and said, I'm doing this play, and I think you're the guy who's supposed to write the songs. And I literally held the phone out and looked up at the ceiling and said, that's really specific. Yeah, it is. But I prayed, right? So
and difficult.
I went to meet with the guy. He put the book down on the table that the play was based on. I looked at the little girl on the cover and said, I don't know why you called me, but I'll try. I'll give it a go. Went home, got down on my knees next to the piano and said, Lord, this feels important. I read the book and wrote a song called Innocent Child, and that was basically the beginning of my walk with the Lord in music. Yeah.
Well, that was the beginning of a lot of songs dealing with a lot of really hard issues and a lot of really big issues. Yes. Musicforthesoul.org, and there are tons of songs on all sorts of issues, things that you're like, I can't believe there's a song about that. But you can check it out, musicforthesoul.org. We'll link you to that in the show notes. But, Steve, as you began to write for that musical initially, it then turned into not just dealing with childhood sexual abuse and trauma, but all sorts of different issues. How were you able, in a sense, if a songwriter has to open up his chest, how were you able to, in a sense, go there and deal with so many really hard things?
I once had somebody ask me about that on a record where I didn't have a personal experience with the issue, and I explained, and I didn't have an answer ready, but in that moment, it just came to me that what we do is like there's a closet, and there are coats of pain on hangers in the closet. And we take that coat out of the closet and we put it on. What does that mean? It means we're going to interview people who've lived through it and recovered. We're going to talk to pastors. We're going to talk to Christian counselors. We're going to read everything we can get our hands on. We're going to pray our guts out. And then we're going to sit down and start writing stuff. And then we're going to go back to the people who've lived it and say, is it this? Does it feel like that? And when they go, that's me.
Then you know you got it.
Then we know we got it. And sometimes it is my own stuff. But if I had every issue that we've dealt with, like I'd be Jello on the floor.
You would be sitting here today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but obviously, I personally find music to be healing. I know when I need a good cry, and I know who I need to listen to when I want to do that. But what I think is, for people who say, how can there be a song about that? The reason there needs to be a song about that is because the main thing that people need to know is that they're not alone. And the minute you hear a song that's about your thing, your stuff, that private guilt, shame, sin, whatever it is, you think nobody's ever been as disgusting as me, nobody's ever been in as much pain as I'm in, and then you hear somebody sing your story, and you realize you're not alone. There are others who've walked that road, who understand, and most importantly, God understands and is with it in you, is with you in it. So I think that's what songs do, is they help people feel known and understood and heard and seen and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I know you started, it wasn't Music for the Soul yet when you started with that book.
No, Music for the Soul was 10 years out from there. Although, interestingly enough, in hindsight, I realized that the moment that God planted the seed was earlier on. A woman came up to me at an incest survivor conference after I sang Innocent Child, and she said, people have been telling me I was an innocent child my whole life. I never believed it until I heard you sing it today.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, wait a minute. I'm supposed to do something about that. I have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
But I really think that's the moment God planted the seed for the whole ministry idea. And as I reflected on what Doris Sanford and Gracie Evans had done with the book, that was one book. They had like 29 books, and it was the hurts of childhood, and they dealt with all these issues. And I thought, somebody needs to do that with music. Well, you know what happens when you do that.
Yeah.
Is the finger turns around and comes back, and why not you, Steve? And you're like, and I thought when I started Music for the Soul, I thought so many people are going to do this. It's going to be so competitive. And I'm in 20 years in, and still there's nobody else doing this. And I think the reason why is because it's dark, it's hard. I think you have to walk kind of a unique road, which doesn't make me special. God deserves the glory for the experiences. And for my team, my goodness gracious, the team that God assembled, to whom much is given, much is expected, right?
Yeah.
So with the writers that I know and the singers that I know and the musicians that I know and the therapists that I know and on and on and on, it's an embarrassment of riches. And so most of the time I'm just standing there combing whatever hair I have left. And these amazing people are writing and singing and performing. And it's a thrill to be involved.
I would imagine there's also an element of people saying, I don't want to go there because I don't want to be known as that guy who just sings about that stuff.
Yeah.
And at the same time, commercially, successfully, you're shaking your head, right?
You can't judge it that way.
Right.
We're not doing this to get on the radio. I like when we do. We actually had a song one time wind up. We got a call from the radio station because the artist who'd sung the song for us had a single on CCM.
Yeah.
And our song was getting so much airplay they wanted to know which one was the single. But I didn't do that. God did that, right?
Yeah.
So we don't aim for radio. The fact that all of my writers are people who have written for radio, it works out that our songs sound like they could be or should be on the radio. But yeah, that's not the target. And when you write a song and you hear that somebody calls you and says, that song saved my marriage, or I was going to take my life tonight, and then I heard this.
Yeah.
When you get those kind of responses, that's worth 10 gold records stacked on top of one another.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Because that's eternal things, that you're touching the heart of God with these issues, because he is the good shepherd and he wants to meet us in our pain. And these songs, through Music for the Soul, they meet us in those difficult places. Now, you said that sometimes it is your stuff. Sometimes it's just all the research you've done and the people you've talked to. Is it a little different when it's your stuff, when it's your pain?
I can answer honestly about that because we had a family member. My wife and I had a daughter who struggled with drugs at one point. And after, and I'm happy to report she's 11 years sober. She actually wound up running a recovery clinic. Great story.
Yeah.
Wonderful, talented child, gifted and a tender, caring heart. But after that, you would have thought the first thing I'd want to do is dive in and write those songs, right? About 4 years later, I thought, all right, Steve, it's time to step up to the plate and write about those experiences. Easily the most painful song I've ever written is called Rock Bottom Soon. And just about a father saying, Lord, get my child to the place where there is no other choice but to turn to you. Because, and you've got to do it because I'm out of ideas. I'm not smart enough, skilled enough. There's just no way I can do it. But I wrote a song called, I wrote a lyric for that song where I said, I could set myself on fire and she'd just go through my pockets looking for change, right?
Yeah.
And people resonate with that. They know.
Well, yeah, the ones who've
Absolutely.
lived it know that's what it is.
Yep.
The drugs are ruling the situation at that point.
Right. Yeah.
So, that was not fun. I did not enjoy writing that, but I did it. So,
When you go to musicforthesoul.org and you look at all the different things that you have written about, from addiction and abuse and sexual trauma and divorce and suicide and all, there's topic after topic.
Yeah.
Are there a few that tend to rise to the surface? Like these are the things that you hear from listeners to the music, like they resonate the most, or does nothing really stand out?
Well, I guess the thing that stands out the most is probably the response to the suicide grief record, because I don't mean to blame the church or anything, but the church, I mean the church at large, struggles with how to talk about suicide. And so to do that honestly, I actually, these kinds of miracles just happen. When everyone says I'm the director of Music for the Soul, I laugh because let me just tell you this story. Tony Wood is one of my dear friends and a co-writer, and we were talking about how maybe there needed to be some songs about the topic, right?
Yeah.
And I happened to get interviewed by the Tennessean, the Nashville newspaper. And I happened to mention, we're thinking about maybe doing something on suicide. And I thought, okay, this is going to be in the religion section. It's going to be on page 8 next to the want ads. Nobody's going to even know this interview happened. The following Monday, my phone starts lighting up. We're on the front page.
Wow.
Above the fold. Color photograph of me at the piano. What?
Wow.
Slow news day. Thank you, Lord, right? So anyway, a woman in South Dakota sees that, reads the story, obviously online, calls her friend in San Diego whose daughter had taken her life by suicide, says, you need to see this. That woman moves to Nashville to be my consultant on the suicide grief record and is currently the chair of my board.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. You see God's fingerprints all through the story.
All over it. So the reason I bring that one up is every time I see it downloaded or we get an order for it or whatever, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, I'm so grateful that we're there for that moment.
Oh, yes. Because like you said, we don't do well in talking about these things. Only in the last, decade or two have we even gotten better at talking. I have a counselor. I have a therapist. I talk to one of my pastors. I have someone that is safe that I can share my story with.
Absolutely.
I can utter the words. I mean, all these things that previous generations have done really badly.
Yeah, and I think the church should be the hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
It's like we've got this gleaming new equipment and these wonderful doctors and nurses and beds. It's like, come. And and we haven't. And I think we need to make that, my vision when I first created Music for the Soul, my prayer was that it would help facilitate for pastors and church leaders and Christian therapists it would help facilitate the conversations that people need to be having. And it's done that. But of course, not to the level I wish it would do that, right?
Sure.
And to the point where I've literally, and streaming has helped make this a lot easier. But basically, if somebody wants our entire catalog, they can, one penny, they can have the whole thing.
Wow.
I mean, everything on our site is gift of any amount.
Yeah.
Now, if you want a physical thing, I got to charge you because we had to,
Material cost.
cost.
Right. Yeah.
But if it's a download, I just want people to have what they need. I don't want anybody who's on the verge of losing it at 3 in the morning to go, I don't have $20 or whatever it is. I want people to take what they need.
Yeah. Well, that heart is obviously a ministry heart. And as I still think back to when you were first given that invitation to write the first song about that childhood sexual trauma and not really knowing where it was going to go and, being able to look ahead and see the ministry being what it is today. As you have walked in obedience and as you have continued to, in a sense, put your yes on the table and write about these hard topics, what has that done to your relationship with the Lord and how has He used it in your life?
Well, when you start a ministry like this, you think you know what's going to happen, right?
You did? Really? Did you think you knew?
This is what we're going to do.
Applause.
This is what we're going to do, and I think it's going to work out kind of like this, right? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we'll do a grief album because everybody dies, so this is the one they need the most. And 14 years later, we actually did do a grief album. But yeah, I mean, I think what God has just surprised us, and to the point where now it's not surprising. It's like stuff happens, and you're almost like, well, yeah, of course, right? Yeah. And which is, I think, what God has helped do for me is help build trust. But it's a never-ending process. Because in the middle of the night when you don't know, I mean, people would laugh maybe, or they think I'm crazy, but how many times have I literally thought, well, we've got enough money to get through the end of next month?
Yeah.
Dozens of times in the last 20 years. But you just keep going and go, well, if you want us to keep on going, I guess something will happen. Something good will happen. And it's a real blessing to be married to a woman who has always said, skip your salary if you need to get that done. Whatever you need to do it, just go. And to have that kind of support, and as well as her willingness to listen to all of the angsty, people might think, well, of course those issues are so hard. Folks, it's not the hard issues. It's the administration of running an organization this that is the wearying part. The music, always a joy, no matter how hard the topic is, because of the reason we're doing it is to create healing. That's when we feel like we're in partner with God, and that's beyond a privilege, obviously.
Yeah.
Admin. It's always admin stuff,
Yep.
unless you're gifted in that. And I mean, as a musician, I applaud you for even trying administration.
Well, thanks. I joke
hard.
with people. It's like there's a bus in our backyard, and I go out and sit in the different seats to represent,
Nice.
Yeah, the seats I shouldn't be sitting in.
Yeah.
Or change hats.
Yeah.
Right. We joked at one point. One of my assistants joked that we should have a phone tree, and people, for so and so press 1, for administration press 2, and all of them are me. Right.
Yeah. Get to Steve's side. So when you have these topics, you said it took you 14 years to get to the grief album.
Yeah.
So what came before the grief album?
Oh, gosh.
That's one question. I have two.
Okay. Well, the first project, and again, this was God, a dear friend of mine offered to serve as the first board chair. And before we had done any recordings, his wife was diagnosed with breast cancer in the 7th month of her first pregnancy.
Oh,
wow.
And it was like, okay, we're doing a project on breast cancer.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're serving our team.
Yep.
And what I didn't realize then, and that's been a really surprising thing God has done, I didn't realize that God was going to heal people on our team every single time. When we did the project Hole in the Side of God for people with loving a child with a disability, my son has spina bifida. So that was personal. And we wrote that song, and I thought, okay, we need a full orchestra on this. So I called my friend Philip Kevern, who's an amazing string arranger. and I asked him if he would do the string arrangement. Little did I know his brother had died from spina bifida. And that there was unresolved pain in that family, especially between he and his mom, because he'd resented his brother so much when he was young because of all the hospital time and all the time away from him that his mom had to spend. And so doing that song became a healing moment in their family.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it'll be great if it goes out into the world and heals some people, but it healed my brother, like right here, right? So, I mean, that's happened over and over and over again.
Which answers the second question, the stories that come with the subjects. I mean, we can name them like we have, but there's always a story bringing it to this is the time you're going to address this.
There are always miracles. Every single project has its miracles. And I'm grateful for those because, you know, when I read the stories, I wrote a book called Music for the Soul, Healing for the Heart about 9 years ago, I guess, everything we'd done up to then. And I sat down and I read the book. I was like, nobody's going to believe this. This reads like a Hollywood thing, right? It sounds all make-believe-ish. That kind of stuff doesn't really happen. But I would say to people, if you want that kind of stuff to happen, go ahead and jump off a cliff and start a ministry and trust God and see what happens. It's pretty cool.
When you think through, it just kind of reminds me of the Henry Blackaby Experience of God type of thing. You want to be a part of what God is doing, and you want to be used by Him. Well, what is He doing? And then, no matter how crazy it may seem or sound or look, do that because if He's moving, you want to be a part of that. So when you look back over all the stories and all the things, is there something, because I would imagine there's at least some kind of anchor points, spiritual markers, things that you look back on as, I don't know what the Lord is going to do in the future, but I know that I'm doing what He has me to do because of this and this and this.
Well, I'd have to say about the Somebody's Daughter project, which was Somebody's Daughter. The subtitle was A Journey to Freedom from Pornography. I was really frustrated because I knew from talking with people in the Christian music industry and talking with pastors that it was affecting everybody. And I couldn't get traction with Christian radio about that. And I was sitting at the breakfast table going, how am I going to get in front of the right people?
Yeah.
And I need to get in front of the leaders of Christian radio. I said to my wife at breakfast, I have a friend named Doug Shaw who runs a fundraising company, Christian fundraising company. And he called me later that morning and said, hey, Steve, I'm speaking to the Innovation Exchange, Christian Radio Innovation Exchange next week in Dallas. They gave me 20 minutes. I don't have 20 minutes worth of stuff. If I give you 10, will you take it? This is like at lunchtime after what I said in the morning. I said, well, it depends. What can I talk about anything I want? He goes, what do you want to talk about? I said, pornography. He goes, oh, sure, come on.
Good for him.
Right?
That's brave.
Right?
Yes.
So here I am. I've got this opportunity and I don't want to blow it. So the night before, I still have really no idea what I'm going to say. Right? And I can't sleep. I get up out of bed. I can't sleep. I go and I lay on the couch. I can't sleep on the couch either. I'm just thrashing about. And finally, I literally scream at the ceiling, what am I going to say to them? And this is one of those moments where I don't know if I heard an audible voice, sure felt like it. Challenge them. On whose authority? Mine. They'll think I have an agenda. And I burst into tears. Because what I felt God saying to me is, do you want to hit for you or do you want to hit for me? And of course, all any songwriter wants is a hit, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, for you, God, for you, right? Obviously, at that point, I'm a mess. And at that point, I had this vision of Jesus coming and opening a jail cell and saying, it's all right, son, you can come out now.
Wow.
So I went, I challenged him. Did it make any difference? I don't know, but I challenged him.
But you're obedient.
Yeah.
And you wrote the project.
Well, we did the project, and I must, since nobody else is here to talk about that, it was a multi-award winning project, and it was translated into Spanish and translated into German, and it's been all around the world. And I literally was invited to a man's wedding, a man's daughter's wedding, because he said, if your project hadn't saved my marriage, I would not be welcome at this event that's coming up, and I want you to be there. Wow. Flew me down.
Wow.
Flew
That's
me
tremendous.
down for, so it's like stuff like that. You're like,
Yeah.
Can't make this up.
No greater reward,
Yeah.
right, than being used by the Lord and allowing Him, letting you see the fruit of that.
And trying so hard to that high wire, that tightrope of, the music industry is all about, look at me, listen to my song, all of that. And you have to find this place where you can say, thank you. I'm glad it was meaningful for you. You can't just go, oh, no, shucks, it's not me, it's God, because that's not being grateful.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's
False humility.
Yeah. Exactly. You don't have false humility, but obviously you really do want to have humility, because these stories I've told you, it's like I don't orchestrate that. None of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
The last couple of moments that we have here, what's got to have you working on right now, and do you have any idea what's coming down the pipe?
There's a smile
Yeah.
on my face.
We're, interestingly enough, we're working on a full-length documentary for Innocent Child, the project that got all of this started. Our new project that we just released is called What Hope Says, for people who need help with anxiety, and I think there's plenty of that going around right now. So I'd ask people to check that out. I think it'll be comforting and encouraging. And we just brought on board a new director of vision and outreach. His name's Brian Parker, who's just joining us to help us continue to spread the word. He understands the whole streaming playlists, all that stuff, all the technological stuff.
Yeah.
One of the seats on the bus I really don't belong in, right?
Sure.
So I'm thrilled to have him on board. He's an amazing singer-songwriter as well. So lots of good stuff. There's always lots of good stuff going on.
Well,
Excellent.
tons of stuff to check out, and hope that you will check that out. It's musicforthesoul.org. We'll put that link in the show notes. But Stu Siler, man, so appreciate you coming in, hanging out with us. Award-winning songwriter, author, so many hats that you wear and have worn over the years, and appreciate you just sharing a few of the stories with us today.
It's been a real blessing for me. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, we're grateful for you and your work in ministry. And again, check it out, musicforthesoul.org, and the link in the show notes, as well as the link to Raphael's Roastery, raphaelscoffee.com. Kind of keeps us running around here, and grateful for their support. But thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you've not done so yet, I hope you'll like and subscribe, and that you'll be our +1 next time.